Ladies and gentlemen, Quapla, and welcome to the Captain's Academy, where today we will cover the upgrade options for your Kahless Deathwing. The Kahless Deathwing is a Klingon-inspired build where I drew inspiration mainly from a bird of prey and a Negvar battlecruiser, and then threw it into a blender with my own creative liberties, and thus was born the Kahless Deathwing. Without further ado, let's have a look and see what the Deathwing is all about. It definitely can be accessed through one of two entrances from the ground. First, you have the rear hangar, and you also have an access point at the nose. When doing space operations, you can access the command hangar, the command bridge from the top here, which will give you ease of access when farming drones, that sort of thing. So let's have a tour of the ship. The hangar area will feature a full medical suite, as well as placement for additional upgrades, including generators, shields, here we have access to place additional constructors or deconstructors, large here on this side, as well as small along these if you want to go that route. The forward section also features a full medical suite to give you some convenience when doing operations working out of the front section of the bridge. The command bridge can be accessed through the elevator here, or also along the way you will have access to a teleporter room. This is already preset, so you don't need to worry about configuring any sort of sensors or anything. So power will only be active once you step on the teleporter itself. We are currently on the second floor, where this will give you access to the bar. The bar featuring a pair of refrigerators and a food processor. As we continue to move forward, we have life support here, which features a bunch of oxygen tanks as well as placement for your core. And then lastly, forward section is the forward bridge. It definitely doesn't feature an overly extensive amount of armoring. Although it does have some, it's expected that pilots should break combat once the shields start to deteriorate. The forward section is reinforced with combat steel, and there are a pair of decoys as far as generators. And then, of course, the supplemental thrusters will also act as decoys. These are featured here. It's recommended once in combat that you will utilize the command bridge, as this is the obviously safer vantage. This also is reinforced, this whole area, reinforced with combat. The whole ship is designed to be a attack profile ship, where most of your firepower sweep is going to be forward facing. You won't have too many defenses facing aft of the ship, so consider that. So perhaps this will mean if in sticky situations you'll want to reverse out of the fight. Now you can, with additional placement of turrets, begin to negate that effect. You can remove some of this some of these thin blocks here and place additional turrets to make up for that coverage if you choose to opt to degrade some of the aesthetic value of the wings. Really, it's a whole big turret placement area if you so choose to go that route. But however, before you have to step to that, there is option to place turrets inside of the wing to prevent you from having to degrade the aesthetic value, but we'll go more into that later. But first, let's cover some of the other features of the ship. Again, we have the full functioning medical suite with shower. This is your shield placement here. This is encased with combat steel all around it. You have a core library here, which is intended for your CPU placement. Subtract these blocks and open up placement for additional cores. Then past that, you can move to double stacking them, and if you need to, then what you can do past that is remove some of the double thin blocks. So this will allow for upwards of 20 or more placement of any configuration of auxiliary cores or quantums, or even for Anvil server, that can mean additional hamster cores. So let's take a look at some of your thruster options. With the ship, the idea is to lean more towards a role-playing effect where the thrust is concealed. Now, you do have a feature within the ship that will open up these vents. So this will display your every potential placement of thrusters, with a few exceptions, which we'll go over here in a second, but it should give an idea of where you need to place your upgrades or additional thrusters. Now, some of these are operating as decoys as well as being supplemental thrusts, such as these. Being on the perimeter here, this operates as a good decoy. Same thing with these here, but these will provide additional lift with you upgrading these to large for Reforge Eden. So let's take a look at some of these options here. First, we have options for drive thrusters operating in the reverse position. So what you'd want to do is remove the advanced. That'll take care of that. For strafe, you also have placement for a drive thrust. And for dorsal thrust, we have placement for 2 more additional advanced drives. Excuse me, advanced thrusters. Now for your rear thrust, you can place an additional advanced as well. And then for lift, you have the option to place 2 drive thrust. So what you'll want to do is remove this shutter door, and then these blocks approximating the area. Okay, so this should cover your central compartment thrust upgrades. So what we're going to take a look at now is your options for the wing mounts. Again, you have a couple compartments here in the wings, which will give you options to place mediums or larges. Just a reminder, you can access the area by pressing the vents thruster vents rather. So for Reforge Eden, this would amount to 6 additional large, considering placement on either side of the wing. So past that, if you want to, you have placement for additional strafing. What you would want to do is remove these blocks between the lines and the blocks including over the line. So that could be 5 on either side. Again, don't forget you can upgrade these mediums to larges for additional dorsal thrust, as well as upgrading here. Now, another option that you have is on the outer pylons. So first of all, you can upgrade these mediums to larges. There is space for that. But in addition to that, you can also place at these dashes and the blocks in between them. This will open up additional placement for you. So just remove until you see the axes. All right. So now your lift thrust is supplemented there with additional larges. As for power, there are a couple of options between advanced generators and an additional fusion reactor if you want to go that route. But first of all, if you want to, there is an option to place a small generator here to double as supplemental power and also to act as a decoy. We just need to look for the shutter door here. Now that would be protected by Xeno steel. All right, that looks about right. So let's go ahead and move to the inside and have a look at your power options here. So one of the things you can do is right out of the gate, you can double stack advanced generators up to a total of 6. Okay. And past that, if you access the auxiliary power room, you do have additional placement for 1 and 2. Now 1's going to be an easy fit right out of the gate, and for an additional second one, you have to remove a block there. And also you have to remove the shutter door. Keep it in mind you don't want to put one here, otherwise you're going to burn yourself as you go up this elevator. But I guess you could place one, you know, that's up to you, and just use this side of the elevator. That'll be your call. Alright, so moving on to the shields, we have open placement here. These would be your mediums as well as your smalls here. And this little bit here, this will accommodate either 2 of the larger shield generators, or you could go 1 large and 1 fusion reactor. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. Let me show you something real quick. Accessing here on the 3rd floor, you have a look at the ship archives, and if you're in the process of setting up your shield configuration, I do have some suggested shield options here. So if you want to take a look at that, all of this allotment will be placed here if you want some ideas on where to go with any certain combination. Again, this will be in the ship archives, as well as any other information covered in this tutorial, and some additional things too, such as the color schemes. There is another option for color, but I'll just leave that as a surprise. Again, it's covered some of the features as well with the thruster vents and then the defense condition. Both of these are accessed through the P menu. Defense condition is something that's just more of a role play thing for a Klingon type impression. It will throw up the blast doors along the center hallways, so that it will provide somewhat of mitigation for if you're in a situation where you lose a portion of your ship, it may end up blocking some of the shots traveling through the center of the ship. But that's almost going to be negligible. So I wouldn't count coins on that, if you will. Okay, so let's look at the shield placement options here. So this should be clear indicators of where you want to place your smalls. Right? And so you just continue this along either side of this center section. Same thing for the mediums here. Should be somewhat obvious. You gotta do a little bit of work here removing these blocks, but it's all worth the effort, right? So there you go. So now you have placement for 3 on one side and 3 on the other, and so that's going to give you 6 out of 8. So this will leave you in a situation where you're lacking 2 of the mediums. So at this point, what you can do is you got a couple options. So you can get rid of this area here and place your additional 2 there. Or if you have access to a fusion, go ahead and get rid of this. So let me show you this here. In order to slot in these larges or the optional fusion reactor, you're gonna have to remove this quote-unquote deco block. So it should be pretty clear. It's an isolated piece of a number of blocks thrown together. And you'll want to remove up until this bit right here. So let's go ahead and do that. I would have really liked a bigger deco option for this rather than having to remove so many blocks, but it is what it is. Once it's done, it's done. Keeping in mind this is actually after I have reduced the amount of blocks that you need to remove. Okay, so, right. So now let's go ahead and take a look at placing one of these larges. I'm not currently missing a block. Yeah, we are. Here we go. Alright. So now you can slot in a pair of large shields. That's one option. I would recommend either with this placement here, you want to go with one recharge and one capacitor, or if you're going to mix it up with a fusion reactor on one side, I would say fusion reactor and one capacitor, considering that the fusion reactor has an innate recharge ability. So keep that in mind. Now, in order to place that fusion reactor, what you're going to need to do is not only in addition to removing that deco cube that I made, but also you want to remove these blocks with the lines in them. You'll remove this level here. This guy. And now you should have access to placing your fusion. Oh, I gotta get this guy. And that. Alright. So that's placed. So now with that in place, you can go ahead and start subtracting from some of these advanced generators. You won't really need all of that to supplement the power being with this one. So maybe considering the total loadout between all the shields and all the turrets and stuff, you might be looking at one fusion reactor plus 2 advanced. I don't know, it depends on how you stretch it out. But with that out of the way, we can now place our last two medium-sized shields. So that's one configuration. Once you have all this power, what you can look at doing is supplementing your artillery and weapons suite with placement of additional turrets and weapons. We'll take a look at that. But here in a second, let me cover something else with the wings. With the Deathwing, the wings are designed to accommodate expansion to the ship. So our options here are additional solar or hydroponics, or a mixture of two. So in order to access this, it's suggested that you'd want to exit out the command bridge and hop down here, and underneath the forward nacelles on either side of the ship there is a shutter door which you can access. Just look for this yellow strip here. Right, so once inside, you now are within the capacity of the wing, which is segmented into different segments. So this portion here will be for the solar / hydroponics. Now there is space here for placing a total of 48 between large and small solar panels. These are going to be on the ground and also on the ceiling as well. Now this bit here, this is indicating places where you want to place your growth plot lights. You would want to remove that block, but first of all, let's just get an idea of how we're going to be doing this solar placement. So it should be fairly obvious here what you're looking to do. Like this would be a wall placement, sideways placement, so we would just rotate so we're ready to place that. Okay, so that's fairly simple right there. Same thing with the bottom placement here. You got a variety of colors, and of course the white lines indicating where you need to place. So that should be fairly obvious. So, same thing with the smalls. It's all distributed evenly between the two wings. So if you want to, you could run a symmetrical placement. No, that's fine either way. So, all right, so that's the solar placement. Let's take a look and see how we're going to set up hydroponics. So again, keeping in mind this area could go either way, or it could do a mixture of two for Reforged players. Just depends on how you play it out. All right, so we've removed one of these blocks here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to place our throw light there. If it wants to display, would be helpful. Right, so now we don't want to remove the floor. We just want to add on top of that at this point. Otherwise, we're going to punch through the wing. That's going to compromise the oxygenation of these wings. So that's about what you would be looking to do. So the grow plots will be level with the step in here. So this will provide a 12 times 9 additional growth plots if you want to do that. Now, this was actually an afterthought. I didn't intend to place the growth plots as an option, being that it was a warship, but the space was there, and just a little bit of configuration, I was able to come up with something that could accommodate either solar or hydroponic, or a mixture of both if you want to do that. Right, so okay, so now we're moving forward with the rest of the wing compartments. So what we want to do is go through this door here, and the area that we need to punch out for our additional weapon placement will be marked out with these little plus signs. Now, if you're looking at it from the outside, if you prefer, what you can do is all of this area here with the vertical bars between the gray plates, this is going to represent your area for additional placement. just whatever configuration you want to go with. Turrets, of course, these place as well. I think it's 6. I think the count is 6. So could be 12 between uh, the two sides of the wings. 12 additional turrets. Keep it in mind as you move away from the center of the ship with these weapon placements, that's going to start to degrade your roll rate. But if you invested some thruster placement, that should offset a lot of that. Of course, and then with the antennas here, you can remove these. Just make sure not to go past the X's. So I would suggest if you're going to do any kind of artillery placement, place your loadout as close to the center fuselage as possible, and any other additional weapons, lighter ones, lasers, positron or stuff. If you have to place those, I would place those towards the outer edge of the wing. Again, here you want to do that. You don't want to place artillery here. You can, but I would recommend against that because that's going to really weigh down the edge of the wings here. And also, I've run into a situation where artillery here on the edge of the wings, they have bullet convergence issues where the rounds tend to overshoot the target. So that's something to keep in mind. You got a couple options here with the artillery turret. So what you could do is you could just leave it as 1, but if you want to drop 3, then place a pair right there, and then you can place your third one here. Or that could be a radar if you so choose. As for the placement of external turrets, you have a couple additional places here. One would be at the front, so you could go a turret there. Just look for the plate there, right? This little metal plate here. So this could serve as a turret or perhaps some sort of multi-tool. You have an additional placement here if you want to. Now, as far as the bottom, again, as mentioned before, if you're willing to swap out some of the aesthetic value, you just go ahead and remove some of these thin blocks. Right, so something to that effect, and you just keep stretching it out. Right, so you should be able to mount all these weapons and supplement it with power with the fusion and whatever configuration of advanced generators that you need. So end result is it's going to be a pretty potent little platform. Not too bad, not too bad. The lore of the ship is I kind of modeled it after something between I guess like a Raptor class of Klingon ship, which is like a step above a bird of prey. So I was thinking something along the lines of a heavy Raptor, or perhaps even a light cruiser. I guess really that role could be dictated depending on how you configure your shields as well as your power. Me personally, I tend to fly in more of a nimble capacity, and went with a higher quality of turrets, so like tier 2 and fewer turrets. But you could see a good amount of turrets and upgrade all of those and convert it to something of a cruiser capacity. Some of the shield value it's pretty decent if you're considering adding additional bastions or regenerative. Let's take a look at some of these numbers here real quick. So, some of the figures here are, 85,000 or 90,000, but these are some of the lighter recharge rates. So, and these numbers were taken with advanced shield placement, and not considering like bastion or regenerative. So, you could realistically be looking at like 150,000 shield total if you're considering placing a bastion. So something to that effect. That's a respectable amount. So in this capacity, it could operate as a heavy strike platform. Just depends on how you want to configure the roll. Now at that point, though, you might become a little sluggish depending on how many turrets you place, as the rear thrust is it's okay. It's just not substantial. You're looking at 2 drive thrust, 4 advanced, and whatever you decide to supplement here. Okay, so I do have set up here a placement for your repair bay. So here's your console here, and the suggested placement is going to be this little block right here. And there you go. The interior of the ship was designed around space. So it may come off as a little dark planet side. So just keep that in mind. I do have an option to, again, with the ship colors, there's a different configuration here. This will lighten up the interior a little bit if you want to go that route. But for the most part, I tried to adhere to some of the Klingon values. Like with the Klingons, they tend to have a browner look with their interiors, and of course greens on the exterior. So now I guess we can take a look at the lighting here. So yeah, it will come off as a little dark planet side, but you know, if we transition to space, it brightens up a little bit. Space seems to be the only consistent with lighting, whereas planet side, you know, that's going to depend on your planet type. Technical difficulties here. All right, so yeah, so this is more towards the targeted ideal as far as lighting. It's, you know, I try to target that darker effect, which you'll see if you ever looked at some of the Klingon stuff. Their interiors seem to be a little darker, so that's what I tried to emulate here. And I think I carried it out to a pretty good effect. Okay, so transition back to the planet side. Look at some of the lighting on the outside here. Well, I guess that just about covers everything. Um, Thank y'all for checking it out. And if you'd like to stay informed about this build and any others to come, please make sure to subscribe. And also like, as this helps the channel grow. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider joining my Patreon, as your gratitude goes a long way to instilling passion into my endeavors. Link in the pinned comment below. Thank you. LyfeForce out.